Who are you?
Go!
Guess what, Josh?
What?
We're on number 70.
What?
Holy shit.
Milestone.
Woo! And guess what movie we're covering?
What movie?
The Exorcist. Ah! Yeah, big surprise, right? Well, you know, 70.
Yeah, that's a milestone. I think it's good to cover an important movie when you reach a milestone such as this.
I do too. I do have to say, though, that we had a very big missed opportunity last week with Lords of Salem and it being 69.
Yeah. The jokes wrote themselves and we blew it.
Yeah, totally blew it.
I see what you mean.
Anyway, so yeah, we're covering The Exorcist. We talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
We love it.
And you have to, because it's the foundation of for so much that came after it.
Yes.
You know, I mean,
yeah.
I think so many movies, whether they're possession movies or not, bit off The Exorcist.
Oh, yes.
It came out and became so successful.
Yes. Yeah, they did. And so how could you not talk about this movie when you're talking about any sort of possession or any sort of religious horror in any way?
Yeah, it like infected so many different branches of horror, you know, whether it be religious or possession or even just supernatural.
Yeah.
Everybody has taken from The Exorcist.
Absolutely. So this was directed by the everly dramatic William Friedkin.
Yeah, R.I.P. buddy, but yeah.
It's a lot.
He was a lot, yeah.
Any interview, a lot. Mm-hmm. And because we have the tin box set, whatever it is, he decided that he needed to talk before the movie, and you don't have a choice.
Yeah, totally unnecessary. Could have been the special features, but
it is in the special features.
Oh, it's there too.
You don't have to have it. Oh God! But yes, this man loved to hear himself talk.
Oh, absolutely. The film was adapted from a novel by William Peter Blatty. He also wrote the script and produced as well.
Mm-hmm. And William Friedkin will talk about that, but just a sprinkle. You know, he just puts on a superhero cape and he's like, dun 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 dun, I put out the movie. Yeah, it's a lot. I have started reading the book. I haven't finished it. I don't think you've read the book.
No, I don't. But I don't read a lot of fiction anymore, so that's part of my problem. So, you know.
It's a problem, people.
It's either comics or biographies for me, pretty much.
I'd like to point out that comics are fiction.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, you know, as far as like a novel.
Oh, okay.
You know.
Fiction. Anyway, so this movie came out in 1973, a long, long time ago, before we were even a twinkle in our father's eye.
That's right.
I first watched it. Okay, bring it on, homebound. All right, so let's see, I was in 7th grade, and so that was like 1990, something like that, and there was some special on 60 Minutes. I'll try to find it somewhere and see if I can put it in a clip. But I was watching it with my cousin, who's much older than me, and she looked at me and she's like, "Have you ever seen The Exorcist?" And I was like, no, because the 60 Minutes thing was shocking, of course.
Oh yeah, the one about possession.
Yeah.
I remember that because we used to laugh about it. Me and my friends. We were like, there was this scene where the guy was like, "My name is Minka." We used to say that to each other.
That's when the entity started to manifest itself by speaking and revealing who he was.
My name is Minga.
Minka, huh?
Minka, yeah.
That's interesting.
My name is Minka.
That's a lot. Yeah, well, to me, it was a little shocking. No, I mean, we've talked about it before. You were brought up religious, not that you were religious.
Yeah, technically, I was brought up Catholic.
Yeah,
sort of, and in that I went to Catholic school, but never actually went to church.
Yeah, and I went to Christian school and had to go to church some of the time.
Yeah, well, besides being forced to go to church during school,
yeah, exactly.
I don't count that.
That's when we would go, yeah. And so it didn't shock me in the way of, oh my gosh, this is Satan or, you know, something like that. Mm-hmm. It just shocked me, the behavior of it.
Yeah.
The psychology of it. I think that was interesting. And it probably is what started to pique my interest in psychology at such a young age. Because I'm like, what the hell is this? It wasn't long after that I watched Faces of Death, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Talk about just right into a brick wall. Just that's a lot. That's a lot for a youngin' like myself. But anyway, so it was very shocking to see the movie because of the language and the actions that she takes in this. Still, even I think I have watched this movie at least 50 times. And it keeps getting funnier every time I see it. Anyway, I'm still surprised at some scenes. You know, I still, I mean, we've seen interviews with Linda Blair, who plays Regan, and she is, yeah, she's so innocent in those interviews, and just kind of went with it.
Yeah.
Just went with the flow on this. And there is a little bit behind the scenes stuff, you know, interviews that are old as shit on that DVD. And she does talk about, you know, like trying out for it and whatever. And she had to repeat some pretty crazy stuff, you know. And so, anyway, so this movie has definitely held up.
Oh,
in my
absolutely,
opinion.
absolutely.
I think it's still shocking to anybody who sees it for the first time.
Well, yeah, I when it first came back into the theater, and I think it was like the director's cut or something,
when
that the spider walk down the stairs was totally unnecessary and
So
all that
stupid,
stuff.
yeah.
I took the gal I was dating at that time to see it, and she had never seen it before, and it scared the shit out of her.
That would have been amazing.
You know?
Josh knew how to treat his hose.
I did, oh yeah.
Did you take her to the Chinese restaurant afterwards?
I may have.
It was across the parking lot.
It's hard to say. I might have.
Yeah.
You never know.
That's where he always liked to take his hose, was this one place.
Little Exorcist in Great China. That's what I call a night of romance right there.
Yeah, hot. And flatulence. Anyway, okay, so the movie.
Yes.
If you haven't seen it,
For the love of God.
why? Yeah, why? If you have seen it, you know, we're just going to go through
Yeah.
it. It'll be like old times. It's fun.
That's right. That's right.
This movie starts out hot. It's hot. We're in Iraq.
Yes.
It's hot.
Hot.
And dry.
Yeah.
It actually was filmed in North Iraq, by the way.
Which is crazy to think of now. But
Yes. Yes. Very crazy. Yeah. But yeah, so.
It must have been pre-Saddam. Like, I don't know when he came into power, but it had to have been pre-Saddam.
Yeah, I don't
right?
know how old that son of a bitch was. But, well, I think he was like almost in his 70s
Yeah.
when he was killed.
Yeah.
So,
Hard to say.
I don't, yeah, who knows? Who gives a shit? He's dead. That's all that matters.
That's right.
But anyway, so, yeah, that's where we start off. And what's going on is they're looking for artifacts and stuff. Now, why a priest is doing this, I still don't know.
Yeah, I don't think they ever really explain why he's into archaeology. I mean, priests can do normal things, too. They don't have to be priesting it up all the time, but, you know. This is where we first see Father Marin, who is played by Max von Sydow.
Which is weird, by the way, because I did... Okay, let's hold on just a second.
Okay.
Just pause for a minute.
Yeah.
I watched Strange Brew like a son of a bitch when I was a kid. And obviously he's in that.
Right.
And he's a lot younger in that. So when I saw him in The Exorcist, I'm like, he couldn't have aged that much.
Well, they made him look...
I know. That's my point,
Oh.
Mr. Interruptus.
Sorry.
Yeah, they did a lot of makeup on this man to make him look aged.
Yeah.
Plus that hotness.
Yeah.
It's just
Aged
hot.
hotness.
Yeah, aged hot. So, you know, I mean, we lived in Nevada for a year. I got a couple more wrinkles from that place. But,
for sure. I did too.
but yeah, I was just shocked that I was looking at the same man. Anyway, continue.
Okay, so he's in Iraq. He's doing archaeological stuff. They are digging in some ruins. They find a talisman of the demon Pazuzu, who is from Mesopotamian mythology. That's as far as I know about Pazuzu, I'm afraid to say. But
well, there was that crazy guy that said that he was Pazuzu, and there was a documentary, like a 3-part series about it.
Okay.
He was just a tweaker.
All right.
Anyway.
Tweaking with Pazuzu.
Yep.
But anyway, and then, you know, he's kind of, he's very unnerved by this discovery. And later on, he has a vision of the full statue of Pazuzu kind of staring him down. They're kind of facing off with one another. And we see some dogs fighting, and it's just kind of very, very foreboding and kind of foreshadowing that there's evil forces afoot that have been unleashed here. And, you know, that bad things are about to happen.
Bad thing.
Bad stuff.
And we also learn that because he's an old man, and we don't know quite yet why, but he has a heart condition.
Right.
He takes some meds with some hot tea on a hot day. He's checking out from there. He's done with this anyway.
Yeah.
He's going back to town, you know.
Yeah.
And they're all disappointed that he's leaving. So they must have had some great times together.
Great times, yes.
Yep.
Well, priests like to drink and smoke. Catholics like to drink and smoke.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's probably partying with those guys.
Oh, I'm sure he was. Well, the rest of the priests like to drink and smoke in this
That's
too.
right.
So this is where we meet Regan and her mom, Chris. She is an actor, and they are on location in Georgetown. I mean, she's got a maid and a butler and a caretaker for her daughter.
Right.
The whole thing. I was like, life is not bad
No,
there.
no,
It's
definitely
bad.
not.
I don't know how long they've been there, but Regan finds an Ouija board
Yeah.
in the basement in a closet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, don't play with that.
No.
Don't play with that. We don't want to play with those things. And her mom's like, where did you find this? And it's like, don't, no, just
Burn
don't.
it. Throw it out.
Put it in the trash. Yeah, don't play with that. And she's just a sweet girl, and just very innocent, and it's a very playful relationship with her mom. Chris is a single mom. We find out that her dad is a deadbeat. Regan's dad's a deadbeat.
Right.
So, you're kind of like, okay, well, they're doing okay.
Yeah.
Things aren't too bad. I mean, she steals a cookie before dinner. Oh, just so
that
sweet.
little scamp.
But while they're playing with the Ouija board, we get introduced to Captain Howdy.
Yeah.
This is obviously a spirit that is talking through the Ouija board that we later find out is Satan.
Yeah.
Apparently, this incredibly nice townhouse, though, might have some rats.
Yeah.
And that's where things start to go awry.
Yeah.
Now, these rats could just be chewing on the wiring. I just want to point that out. There's some weird flickering happening. But anyway,
But we know it's Pazuzu.
Yeah. It ain't no rats.
The Zeus is in town.
Yeah, he's hanging out.
He has traveled from Iraq after a lengthy vacation.
Yes.
Seeing the sights.
Yes.
7 wonders of the world, 8 wonders of the world, however many wonders there are.
Now he's in Georgetown.
Now he's in Georgetown.
Yeah.
Which I would like to point out is one of the, if not the oldest Catholic universities, actually. So.
Fun fact, folks.
Yeah.
So, and that is where we meet
Father Karras.
Yes. Father Karras is not only a priest, he's a fairly young priest, but he's also a psychiatrist.
Yes.
Which is an odd combo platter, by the way. They did actually work with real priests and the Catholic Church on this movie to try to get it more factual.
Oh, yeah, and even Father Dyer is an actual priest.
Exactly.
So.
And a heavy drinker and smoker.
That's right. Catholics like to drink and smoke. I
Yes.
can say that because I was brought up Catholic.
That's right. And it's fact.
You Catholics out there, you know.
Yeah. So he's kind of just torn on life right now. He thinks he's losing his faith. And it has to do with some personal matters in his own life. His mom is elderly. Yeah. She lives by herself somewhere, I think in like the Bronx or something.
Terrible
like
area.
Yeah, really bad
really
neighborhood.
Shitty area.
And doesn't even have a TV, just a radio. And she has broken her ankle at some point.
Yeah.
So he just feels bad that he has to leave her, and he's just torn on life, and he's at a crossroads, unfortunately. And soon he meets the devil at the crossroads. On the second night of rats in the attic in the house, the candle almost burns Chris's face off.
Right.
The big torch.
Yep.
And it's like Pazuzu just like...
Yeah, exactly.
Like, ha-ha. Yeah, just playing with lighter fluid up there.
Yep.
Anyway, but... the servants are like, nope, there ain't no rats.
No
I told
rats up there.
Yeah. But as soon as Chris comes down from the attic, she can hear Regan screaming, and she goes into her room, and her whole bed is shaking, and it's bananas.
Yeah.
The following morning, we're at the Catholic Church, and a shocking scene happens. Now, first of all, I'm going to point out, how do you not notice this when you first walk in?
Right.
When you first walk into a Catholic church, the priest always stops and he bows.
Yeah.
And he's carrying these big floral arrangement things, and he's bringing them over to put in front of the statues that are there. And I think, is it Mary?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mary's got some pointy boobs and a wiener now.
Yeah.
And it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, first of all, was Satan like an art school dropout?
Yeah.
Like, did he come up with this clay to make this?
Did we? And that's one question I had. Like, as I've thought about this for a long time now, are we to assume that Regan was already possessed and she did that?
I don't think it was her necessarily. I think it was just in town. Because how would she get out?
Right.
I mean, there is the point that the window is open. So maybe she flew down the stairs and went to the church, opened up the door.
Or maybe it had possessed somebody else and they did it.
It could be. It could have been Captain Howdy.
Yeah. Well,
He's out riding around his little pony, and he decided to go and desecrate a church.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it's awfully coincidental.
Right.
We'll just go with.
Right.
Now we're at an asylum.
Yeah.
And apparently, Father Karras' mom, she fell again, and her brother put her in an asylum. Apparently because that's like the state run or whatever situation, unfortunately. There's a reason why we got rid of some of those.
Yes.
And she really doesn't belong in an asylum, but they have her strapped to the bed too. I mean, it was ridiculous. But anyway, all she did was fall. She should have just been in the hospital.
Yeah.
But his uncle quickly reminds him, that he's a failure for being a priest.
Right.
He should have
So
been a
being
psychiatrist.
yeah.
Fun fact though, folks. We haven't really said where we were, but I will tell you we are not far from the State Hospital of Oregon where One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was filmed. Next, we're at a swinging 70s party.
Yeah.
This is back at Chris's amazing townhouse. And, it's just some film folks.
Mm-hmm. Burt Dennings, the director of the film, is totally wasted. And he keeps taunting the butler of Chris's house, calling him a Nazi. And almost comes to blows with this guy because he's actually Swiss. And he yells out, "I'm Swiss," at the whole thing. And
So a bunch of adults, drunk adults, in their 70s attire, standing around a piano, singing Broadway tunes.
Yes.
Okay. And suddenly, everybody stops and looks because Regan's standing there, and she looks like shit.
Yes.
And she just stops, and she says, "I'm going to die up there."
Yeah.
And then starts pissing on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's, of course, shocked by this, and
Yeah.
Chris is like, "Oh, she hasn't been feeling well. You think?
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't you think you might want to call off the party?"
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I mean, she had actually been okay earlier in the evening, but
Mm-hmm.
once she went up to her room, not a great place, apparently. Chris brings her back upstairs and is giving her a bath, and Regan is questioning, why, what's wrong with her, what's going on. And so we can tell that there's still a little girl in there, still fighting for her little tiny life, despite there being something taking over her body.
Right.
And Chris just says, "Oh, you've just got to take your medication. It's just nerves." People used to just say anxiety was just nerves.
Right.
And I think it's funny that that's the terminology we used to use. "Oh, it's just your nerves." Yeah. Father Karras's mom, unfortunately, has passed away at this point, and he's very distraught.
Yeah.
Father Dyer comes and visits him in his tiny closet that he lives in. He's just bad. He's living bad.
Yeah, he is.
And they're just drunk and smoking
Yeah.
again. And that night, Father Karras has this really crazy-ass dream. What we see is what becomes Captain Howdy, essentially. It's just this weird outlined face. It's kind of like corpse painty, kind of, and it's just this flashes of him, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But we see Father Karras's mom standing at the top of the stairs of the subway, and he's yelling for her to stop, but she just keeps walking down, and that's her leaving the earth, essentially.
Right.
Chris has taken Regan to the doctor, and she just has a psychotic episode, and they give her something like Thorazine or something like that. And, I mean, she just gets up and slaps the shit out of the doctor and calls him a fucking bitch or something like that.
Yeah.
So the doctors with Regan are starting to say, "Oh, it's some sort of temporal lobe thing, a lesion in her temporal lobe," and blah, 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 blah.
They don't know.
They don't know anything. They're just spitballing.
They're grasping at straws, man.
Yeah. I mean, and we've talked about this.
Yeah.
This is, this was the case back then.
And it
unfortunately.
is often the case in horror movies in general.
Yeah, because it's scarier to have that uncertainty,
Right.
And to have nobody believe you, and that's really what it's coming down to. Because she's like, "What are you talking about? How do you explain the bed and whatever?" And he says, "The problem isn't your daughter's bed; it's her brain." And I'm like,
Clever doc.
deep.
Yeah.
Put that on a bumper sticker, dummy. Anyway, so they decide that they're going to do these tests. I'm going to put pictures up of what these are and the actual names of these tests, because they don't do obviously different versions of them. They do CAT scans and MRIs and that kind of thing nowadays, which are a lot less painful.
Yeah.
But back then, I think it was an angiogram or something along those lines. And they did a spinal tap.
Yeah.
And it's to put a dye into your bloodstream so it would show up better on the x-rays.
Right.
Now, fun fact, real doctors doing this in this movie. Obviously the procedure's not real, but he is a doctor that did do these procedures in real life, so he knew what the hell he was talking about. It looks like she's in horrible, horrible pain because of it. I mean, she's strapped down.
Yeah.
And the machines are incredibly loud. If you've ever had an MRI, folks, you know that they put shit over your ears because it's so loud, and they play music. Now, that's nowadays. Think back in 1973 with these machines where it's just like, almost like a jackhammer.
Yeah.
And it's a constant taking of photos, because we didn't have, obviously, MRIs to do this. So they, of course, don't find anything.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, well, maybe we should do another series." Yeah. After these failed tests, nobody has any answers. They just keep giving her sedatives. She was actually prescribed Thorazine for home use. I'm like,
That's hardcore.
that's serious shit right there. See, this is when she should have been in a loony bin. But Chris didn't want her in one.
Right.
But she could have been next to Demi's mom.
Yeah.
Why you do this to me, Demi? Anyway, so shit's just happening. The bed's moving everywhere.
Yeah.
Shit's crazy. So they call the doctors over. This is back when house calls still happened. I think when you're rich, you can still do this.
Probably.
But so then they try to go with split personality,
Right.
and that this lesion on her temporal lobe that they couldn't find before, that this is causing spasms.
Right.
I'm like, bro,
Yeah.
that's a stretch.
Right.
That's a serious stretch. So anyway, this is when they're like, yep, let's do some more exams again.
Yeah.
And it's a whole nother horrible exam that she has to go through, and she's just screaming in pain. And of course, nothing.
Yeah.
Chris had been at the doctor's office, and so while she was gone, Regan was being watched by her caretaker. And apparently the caretaker went to go fill a prescription and asked the drunk Burke Dennings to come over.
Always good.
Yeah, seems like a great guy. And just kind of watch over some situations, like he's going to know what the hell to do.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, while she's gone, so Chris comes back and the phone's ringing and the lights are flickering and shit's going crazy in there. And we know that there is some police activity outside at this point simultaneously.
Yeah, but we don't know why.
We don't know why. So while the chaos is happening, another person from the movie people, whoever the cast or whatever, he comes over and he said, did you hear what happened to Burke Dennings? And she's like, no, what are you talking about? He's like, oh, you haven't. No shit. And they're like, well, he's dead.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know that Regan / Captain Howdy / Pazuzu, whoever you want it to be at this point, threw Burke out the window.
Yes.
Another fun fact about this movie is that the outside of the house was actually built out for this movie because it was closer to the stairs that way and made it more realistic for him to fly and fall down those stairs.
Okay.
Originally, the house is not that close.
Gotcha.
And then we bring over a hypnotist, probably just a psychiatrist, and he tries hypnotizing her. And this is when we find out she has poor dental hygiene. Shit's rank in there, apparently. She starts growling and just, it smells horrific. And everybody's just like, oh my God, And she suddenly just reaches up and grabs that guy's by his junk and just throws him. And it's just chaos in there. Furniture's moving around and it's nuts.
Yeah.
Literally. Next, we meet one of the most annoying characters in this movie, Lieutenant Kinderman. He is on the case of Burke Dennings and knows also about what happened at the church and all that stuff. And so he goes to talk to Father Karras about it. But he feels like being all casual, asking him about movies and everything else. Back in the doctor's office in the big conference room with all the smoking. There's a lot of smoking in this movie.
Yeah, there is.
Now they're like, maybe we should have her see a psychiatrist. And they're basically proposing for her to go to an asylum.
Yeah.
And Chris is like, nah, son. Which is dumb.
Yeah.
They really should have just had her go to an asylum at this point.
Right.
Because she could have been strapped down and they could have, checked things out more. And then randomly, in the most random way possible, let's bring up an exorcism.
Yeah.
I don't get this one. Why? Why did they go from medical to religious so fast? I think they're just throwing shit at her and just like, hey, Chris, do something.
Yeah.
We know we don't know what we're talking about anymore. Here's some other shit.
Yeah.
Now, what's dumb is that she was like, you want me to take my daughter to a witch doctor?
Yeah.
Now, granted, they're not religious people.
Right.
That is the last thing I would go, from priest to witch doctor.
Yeah.
That's not, we're not saying some voodoo ceremony
Right.
here. Chris finds a crucifix under Regan's pillow. Obviously, one of the staff put
somebody
it
did,
there, and they just don't want to say it. Then the lieutenant shows back up, and this is why I hate him. He goes and he's interviewing Chris about the Burke Dennings thing, but he's super casual about it. Then at the end of the conversation, he asks for her autograph. And he said it's for his daughter. And then Chris is like, oh, well, what's your daughter's name so I can sign it to her? Oh, it's for me.
But it's also there, that scene is also to kind of even more so establish that, to put that thought in Chris's mind that Regan has killed Burke,
Yeah, because now she's like, oh, the window was open, and it happened to be when she was gone, and blah, blah, blah. And, of course, it's even more heartbreaking that this has happened. And after Bro leaves, then we hear Regan again. Gosh, she's a lot. She's a handful. We go back to her room, and she has the crucifix. Now, what's weird about this is that the crucifix was brought downstairs, put on the little table by the front door, but magically she has it back in her hand.
Right.
And she is stabbing the shit out of her pee-pee with this crucifix, saying, fuck me.
Yeah.
And I think out of all scenes in this movie, this is the one that takes the cake.
Yeah, it's by far the most shocking, I think, as well.
Then she grabs her mom's face and pushes it into her PB.
Yeah.
It has blood all over her face now
Yeah.
and is like saying, lick me. And
Yeah.
it's a lot.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot for a poor mom to go through. And then slaps the shit out of her and gives her a black eye.
Yeah.
But she says to Chris, before all this happens, in Burke Denning's voice.
Yeah. Says, do you know what she did, your cunting daughter?
Now, what is the cunting?
I
I don't know what that means. I don't know why. If anybody knows, please tell me, because I'd like to understand what cunting means. But there was a whole thing he said something similar to that when he was down in the kitchen taunting the butler guy.
Chris meets with Father Karras. They talk about exorcism. And I think at this point he kind of explains how difficult that is to come by and that it has to be approved by the church and things of that nature. He's willing to see Regan, but as a psychiatrist, not as an exorcist at this point, And she's Chris is kind of upset about that, but
she's desperate.
Yeah, but she's
desperate for help, and she's saying, the doctor sent me to you, and you want to send me back, and blah 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 blah. And you can tell when somebody is not religious and they are now asking for an exorcism, they're at their last resort. They don't know what else to do at this point.
Right.
And the idea was just thrown at her. So how is she going to know that the church doesn't really discuss these things anymore? So Father Karras does eventually agree to come over and check out Regan, see what the situation is, because he doesn't know what else to do.
Right.
And so he brings over a recorder or whatever. Right now, Regan is probably almost at her complete worst.
Yeah.
She is bound to this bed. All the furniture's been moved out of the room because otherwise she's going to just throw it at people, apparently.
Yeah.
And everything is padded, the whole thing. She has a feeding tube in through her nose.
Yep.
And just her face is destroyed.
Yeah.
And it's bad news. It's not good what's going on in there. And so Father Karras goes in to talk to her, and she yaks on him, and that's when we first see the green puke, which is split pea soup, by the way, which you can buy at Pea Soup Anderson's.
That's right.
If you look up Pea Soup Anderson's, it's in California. There's 2 locations.
I recommend the patty melt.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the grilled cheese sandwich there, not the split pea soup.
Yeah, not so much the pea soup. No.
Yeah, we're at the big ending.
Yeah.
The big finale of this.
Yeah.
And these are probably some of the most memorable scenes for a lot of people. A lot of stuff that gets reshown through, just little clips and whatever. The church has decided that it can't just be Father Karras because he does not have the experience that is necessary, even though he was the one that wanted to do this. So they bring in Grandpa. That would be Father Marin, back from Iraq.
Yes.
And he's ready for the fun. He had performed an exorcism before, and that is why he has a heart condition. That's what we find out. And it damn near killed him.
Yep.
So anyway, so they bring him in, and they start going for it.
Yeah.
Ultimately, unfortunately, Father Marin dies.
Yes.
Father Karras had to step out for a few minutes.
Yeah, because he was succumbing to the psychological attack of the demon. I mean,
Yeah.
he was losing it. And Father Marin recognized it and basically kicks him out. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
it's his own fault.
yeah.
So when Father Karras comes back into the room, he sees that Father Marin's dead. He tries to revive him. Doesn't happen.
No dice.
He's toast. And Father Karras is just so upset because this is the second elderly person that has died on his watch, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's just grief, between his mom and his religious stuff and all of that. So he finally just says to Regan / Pazuzu, whoever she is, Satan, says to Satan, just to enter him.
Yeah.
And then, because he's like half in, half out, he throws himself out the window and kills himself.
Right.
The same way that Burke Dennings died. And how he didn't actually die until later on, because he's sitting there with Father Dyer, and he's like, oh, do you have any,
Yeah, he's giving him last rites.
Yeah. And he's still moving his hand, and it's all chunky.
Yeah.
Anyway, now, here's my question, though, is that once he's dead, then where does that spirit go?
Right.
It's going to go back in the house. It's going to go find that Ouija board and go back into it.
Yeah, well, later, of course, we find out that he didn't actually die in Exorcist 3, but, that's besides the point.
One of the worst movies on earth, by the way.
Not as bad as 2. 2's way worse.
2's good compared.
Are you high?
No. 2's better.
Are you out of your mind?
2's better. Anyway, let's go back to it. Because I'm right and you're wrong. So, we're at the end of the movie. We're wrapping it up.
Wrapping on up.
And you can see that Chris and Regan they're out.
Yeah.
They're out E5000. Probably going to Europe, like she had said she wanted to do. And Regan looks almost normal. She's a little pale.
Yeah.
couple scars.
Yeah, but looks much better than...
Yeah. And Father Dyer walks up and is just like,
yeah.
And Chris is like, she doesn't remember anything. He's like, good.
Yeah.
And I think he knows what actually happened.
Yeah, I do too.
But, they just leave it.
Yeah.
Let's just not say anything. So Regan comes out, though, and Chris introduces him, whatever, and she just sees the white collar.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is when we know that she does remember.
Yeah,
she remembers
something
stuff.
at least.
And she remembers, that there were priests there helping her. And so she gives him a big hug and a kiss on the cheek, and it's really sweet. And it's just like, okay, somewhat of closure in a sense, and you're like, hopefully you don't go on to make a second and third movie, but you do.
Yeah.
But as they're driving away, Chris had been given Father Karras's necklace.
Yeah, it was a St. Joseph medal.
Yeah. And so they stop and they give it to Father Dyer, and that's the end.
Yeah.
That's the end of the movie. Like I said, shocking as shit.
Yes,
Everybody
absolutely.
knows this. If anybody who's seen it knows it's shocking. If you don't say that it's shocking, at least the first time you saw it, you're full of baloney.
Yeah.
Because nothing like it out there.
Yeah, unless you've seen, more extreme, unless you saw this late in life and happened to see more extreme things beforehand, there's no way that you wouldn't think this was shocking, in my opinion, at least.
Well, here's the thing with it, though, is that if you were to sit there and go, you know what, this did come out in 1973, and like we talked about, it was shocking.
Mm-hmm.
It was shocking then. Mm-hmm. So you have to put it into perspective of when it did come out.
Right.
And we have to do that with a lot of horror movies because a lot of things don't age well.
Right.
And we have to go, but back in, and go, okay, that's fine. That's how it is. But like I said, this movie holds up. Mm-hmm. It always will be. It'll always be a comfort movie for me. Sorry, not sorry. Along with Silence of the Lambs. They're just movies that I'm very familiar with. I do need to read the book to fill in the rest of the gaps. Just like The Entity, I think that there's a lot of gaps that could be filled, and I think that would be nice to just have the complete package of it.
Yeah.
And then sit there and go, God damn it, why'd you cut that out? But what can you do about it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I like we said, it is the foundation of religious horror, exorcist type horror. There's been some pretty shitty exorcism movies.
Oh, absolutely.
The closest and shocking to me for recent movies is a movie called Immaculate, which we're going to cover because it was the first one that I've seen that was like, oh my God. Mm-hmm. Nuns are scary. All that's religious stuff is scary.
Yeah, for
sure. That's what the church is based on, is scaring the shit out of you. With amazing sculptures and paintings, Jesus bleeding to death. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so I think that this is a great movie. I don't know who wouldn't like this except for somebody who is incredibly religious.
Yeah.
If you're a horror fan, you should like The Exorcist.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
I'm sure there's somebody out there, some schmucko who's like, oh, no, it's not scary at all. And it's slow.
Yeah.
Anyway, you go ahead and wrap it up.
No, I agree. I think this is a timeless movie. It's just a great good versus evil story. And it shocked me when I was a kid and still, I think, holds up to this day. It's just one of the all-time great horror movies, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you seen it? I hope you have.
Yeah.
If you haven't, get out from underneath that rock.
That's right.
If you haven't seen it, what we just told you is not going to do anything to you watching this.
Yeah.
It'll still shock the living shit out of you. I promise that. Mm-hmm. It is a lot. And like I said, put it into perspective of when it came out in 1973, that people were supposedly running out of movie theaters, barfing, I don't know, fainting, whatever dumb shit they said they were doing.
Yeah.
That it was a lot back then. And let us know what you think about it. Mm-hmm. Is there another exorcism type movie that you would prefer or that you think that we should watch? Let us know, because we probably have seen it, but if you want us to cover it, we can cover it. Why not?
Yeah.
If it's The Omen, I'm just going to say no.
Yeah.
No, Omen's just boring.
Not
Sorry.
a fan.
Yeah, it's boring. Hot take.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that's it for number 70.
Yep, absolutely.
I think The Exorcist deserved, a big number, a big one.
Yeah.
We like big ones. So anyway, until next week. Bye.